Hello guys and welcome to another video. Shadow and Bone Season 2 came out last week and today we're here to talk about it. I have so many feelings about this show and specifically about Season 2, and funnily enough, if I were making this video after just watching the first 4 episodes of the season, this would be a completely different video, but those last 4 episodes, and specifically that season finale, was just... It made me feel so much that night when I tried to go to sleep, I couldn't because I just kept thinking about everything that had happened and replaying it in my head. So today, we're talking about it. If you are just interested in my rant about why the show is never going to be as good as the books and my opinion on the show as an adaptation, then skip to that. So let's start off with what is the Grishaverse. The Grishaverse is a book series universe composed of 3 different main series. The first one chronologically in the universe and in our universe is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Then we have our first duology with 6 of Crows, and then we have our last duology with King of Scars. These 3 series take place chronologically. Some do have the same characters, but it's mostly minor characters, like Soya from Shadow and Bone is one of the main characters in King of Scars, as is Nikolai. But Nina, who was a main character in 6 of Crows, is also technically a main character in King of Scars. So King of Scars is like a mix of the first 2 book series. Can you read each of those series independently? Technically, you can. Specifically 6 of Crows or Shadow and Bone, you can read those independently. I would not pick up King of Scars without having read at least Shadow and Bone. How was the Grishaverse adapted? So, you would think that being the most popular 6 of Crows would be made into a TV show, or they would make Shadow and Bone, the first trilogy, into a TV show, or something like that, you know? Have one thing, and then you can move on to the others chronologically, or have them be completely separate, because that is fine too. You can do that as well. See, for example, Percy Jackson and King Chronicles. One belongs to Disney and another one belongs to Netflix. However, what they decided to do, create a TV show called Shadow and Bone, where we would follow the story of the 3 main books of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, as well as the Crows from 6 of Crows. That was a decision that they made. That was definitely a decision. So in the adaptation, we get to follow Alina, Mal, and the Darkling, but at the same time, we get to see the Crows before we see them in 6 of Crows. So technically, this isn't breaking any rules yet, because the Crows were doing something before they appeared on page for the first time in 6 of Crows. So chronologically, this could be like extra bonus content that we've never seen from the Crows before they get to have their own story. So far, so good. And that is true until episode 8 of season 1. Season 1 is pretty true to the Crows, I would say. They stay pretty much in character, and although I would never have thought the Crows would do something like that before they appear in 6 of Crows, I'm like not opposed to them having little side quests to go on. I'm completely fine. They needed a way to weave them into the narrative, and they found a way, which wasn't like the worst way. So I could get behind it because that meant I got to see more of Cass, of Jesper and Inash together, and we got to see Nina's and Matthias's backstory together, and they didn't even have to make anything up because chronologically it did not make the best sense, but it didn't change much for their plot lines and for their character arcs, so I was happy with that. Fast forward to season 2, and they threw that concept out the window. These are all my thoughts, so let's see. Season 2, the first line we have here is that it's all over the place. So we start with Alina's storyline until we get to the palace where the royalty is, and when we have the party and stuff like that. Nothing happens in Alina's storyline. It's just her and Mal, which love to see much better than in the books. We get some cool scenes with Alina talking to the Darkling. Really reminded me of what Rey and Kylo Ren were doing in the Star Wars trilogy. It was fun, it was cool visuals, and it was very imaginative and new, so I really like that. But there's plot. I was like, what is happening? Nothing is happening. They're just going from one place to another, and we're just getting bombarded with new characters. I like Nikolai, but I feel like we didn't get enough of the twins to really get to know them. We got Tamar in a lot of scenes, but she wasn't giving. Besides wearing makeup in every single scene, she didn't speak to me. As per usual, the CROWS are the most interesting and especially entertaining part of season 2. I think that the CROWS get a lot more interesting direction, like the way that the camera zooms and pans and shows the action is much more entertaining. It's just like a lot more innovative than just like regular shots that we get with Lena. My problem with the CROWS side of the storyline for now doesn't have to do with the characters or the plot, it has to do with the sets, because that's what they look like. They look like sets. We only see the streets of Ketterdam, we never see the harbor, we never see the canals, we just see like tiny streets on the slat and tall buildings, which is fine, which is what's there, but I'm like, we're supposed to be on a pier or a harbor, where are the canals? There's no feeling of how big this city is, because we just get one wide shot at the beginning of like, oh, this is Ketterdam, and that's it. So we're always like in there. We can never see the sky. It just looks like a street that they created on a set, which is what it is, but it's not what you want it to look like. On top of that, it's always dark or raining in Ketterdam and always cloudy. It feels like Gotham, and I don't think that's how you want it to feel, like medieval Gotham. I understand it is always rainy and cloudy, but could we maybe shoot some daylight scenes in Ketterdam? Could we maybe shoot somewhere with like a little bit more openness, like a plaza, a square, somewhere where it doesn't completely read like a set? And that's mostly all of my complaints for the first half of the season. I thought the first half did a good job at introducing new characters, even though there were quite a lot of them. I did really enjoy seeing the CROWS together. They have really nice interactions, especially really love what Nina brings to the group. As the only one who will speak back to Cass, I think having her in this dynamic is really great. I loved seeing Wylan and Jesper and their back and forth, and they were so cute together, and just like Wylan's face always like so cute. Yeah, I liked that Cass got a win in the first half, because Cass Brecker can never win in the Shadow and Bone TV show. He is always set up to fail. He does not look like a mastermind. His schemes always fail, but his scheme with Pekka Rawlings worked, and I liked how when Pekka Rawlings said, "I'm begging you," Cass said, "Are you?" And then he got the man on his knees. Great, love to see it. So, the second half of the season, we had the Darkling with his army of Grisha. They're like 20, 30 people if I'm being generous. And yes, they've been amplified or whatever, but it's really hard to make 20 to 30 people look menacing when they're just running through the woods and creating tiny fireballs, which remind me of the fireballs that Mario blasts when he's in like flower power mode. One of the main problems with the season is that where does the budget go? Probably all into the sets and the costumes, and that leaves us not a lot of budget for the special effects. And for a show that has people who can wield the elements, that's very important. Heart renders, easy to do. People like fabricators, also easy. But then we have the people who control water and who control fire, and that looks so bad because we have like tiny little fireballs and really bad looking magic water. So was not a fan of that. I'd rather have people who just control wind, which is so much easier to do with practical effects. But moving from that, we have the biggest problem for the show as a whole, not having anything to do with script or plot, and that is scale. Like I said before, in Ketterdam, it's always like the tiny little streets. We don't know how big Ketterdam is. We don't know how big the world is. They did introduce sections in the show where we are shown the map and we go from one place to the other, but I thought that was more confusing than anything else, so it didn't really help me know where we actually were, especially because they always show the names written in another alphabet, so it's very confusing. But as I was saying, the biggest problem is scale, and this is maximized in the last 2 episodes where we have the breaking out of the war. Ravka is in the middle of a civil war between the First Army and the Second Army led by the Darkling. Obviously, the Second Army is in itself divided into two now. The Darkling's second army and Alina's second army. So it's a three-way civil war. Everybody hates everyone, and Ravka is a big nation. So the civil war should be a big deal. But what do we get in those two final episodes? There's no more than 20 to 30 people on each side. The Darkling has his 30 Grisha, and Nikolai has his 20 people at most in that bunker place where they're waiting for the Darkling. Those scenes where they're defending the entrance of the fort or the bunker or whatever, they're in a straight line and they're hiding behind wooden panels, and it's literally 10 people against 20 people. It just does not feel like the end of a great civil war that almost destroyed Ravka. It just feels like a gang battle. It feels like 20 people were like, okay, we don't like these 30 people who have power, let's battle it out. And it just looks so small and so pathetic, and I think Netflix could have done so much more. This does not feel like the epic climax to a war. This leads me to talk about Tamar and Tolia in the last two episodes. Tolia, we'll talk about him later, because he didn't disappoint me as much as Tamar. But Tamar is in the fight, you know, when they're protecting the entrance of the fort in that wide street. They're behind the wooden planks. What does Tamar do? She doesn't use her heart render powers, which we know she has and can use very well. She doesn't. She just keeps looking from behind the wooden plank 100 times. Every time she did that in the 7th episode, I wanted to reach inside the screen and pull her out of there and be like, dude, just use your powers. You have them. Use them. I don't know why sometimes she just was so insistent on attacking with her two axes against Grisha who have been amplified. Just because you're a Grisha who has been amplified doesn't mean that heartrender powers don't work on you. So I don't understand why Tamar just insisted on using her axes or doing nothing at all. The most unlike Tamar thing that she could do, just stand behind there and look. And for a heartrender to use their powers, they have to have a direct line of sight. They have to be able to see who they're going to use it on. So she kept glancing and like, if you can see them, why don't you use your powers? And I can't believe a side character is one of the things that annoyed me the most about that episode, but it is because it makes no sense. And that is a big problem that they have in the show, is that they have really, really powerful characters, but since they don't want them to win so easily, they just have them not use their powers, and it's very frustrating. And the same thing happens with Tolia later on. Tolia just appears randomly and there's 4 Grisha he has to fight. 4 amplified Grisha. And you're like, okay, we're gonna see some cool heart-rending moves. No, we don't. He takes all of them out with martial arts and his katana, which obviously if it were any other character without powers or hiding their powers, would love to see it. But it's a person who has powers and who we know has powers and who everyone knows has powers and can use them. So why are you just beating everyone up instead of going like, boom, heart stop, you're dead? On top of all of that, episode 7 was mostly Alina and her crew. So there were basically no crows until the very end. It was boring, which leads me to the crow at the very end, which just happens to be Inesh. This whole plot about going to get a sword that can help them is stupid. Let's just say it like it is. I know it doesn't happen in the books, but that's not the reason it is stupid. It's just plainly stupid. They needed something for the crows to do in the second half and something for Tolia and Soya to do. Fair enough, but did it have to be this side quest that led anywhere? First of all, we have a super overpowered Grisha who for some reason is powerful enough to not feel the effects of a heart render. This does not exist. This should not exist. This woman is more powerful than the Darkling. I believe she's more powerful than the Darkling and more powerful than Alina. She is literally Magneto and can bloodbend because there's iron in your blood. And I did not believe her powers for a second. The fight looked bad and it didn't make me happy. What I was saying is that you can't just have a side quest to get a sword and then have Inesh use that sword only twice, and then I know that they're never going to talk about it again. And it's so convenient that this magical artifact just happened to exist and could be used for the very thing that we needed to do, which was to destroy the shadow monsters. You can't just have a problem and then have a magical random artifact appear that solves that problem completely. You know why you can't do that? Because it's boring and it's easy and it's opting out of doing a more interesting, compelling storyline. But then we get Inesh, okay? We get Inesh at the end of episode 7, and she's like, oh my god, I'm so badass, I appear there. And I say this with all the love in my heart, I love Inesh. But then she has a sword in her hand, she lets Nina get jumped by a Volcra and disappear, and I don't know why Nina was there. She literally did not do anything. They had to take her out of the fight until the last moment because she would have turned the tide, and can't have one person being too powerful. No, 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 no. So Inesh is there with Soya and they do nothing. Every time they see a shadow monster, she's like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? I did not just spend the half of the season trying to get the sword, but I don't know what to do with it now. I don't know why it took her so long to realize that she could use the sword against them. She knew that, so why didn't she do that? It was a very Tamar moment of her, and I do not like to see that. Can you believe I'm getting this worked up about this season and I haven't even got into my thoughts as an adaptation? Besides that, I just have to say that I do not like the fact that they included Nina in that final scene, for her just to be like taken by the Volcra, deposited behind a rock. She was passed out, but then in the moment where they needed her, the light came back and they found her behind the rock, like 2 feet away behind the rock. They're like, Nina, we need you now. The plot needs you. And she was like, oh, okay, I'm awake miraculously now because the plot needs me. There was a lot of convenience of the plot in season 2, and I just wish we had smarter writing. My last piece of beef with the show as a non-reader is that when we are at the palace, we see Nikolai's mom, the queen, who is blonde. She's wearing like a pink dress and she has a crown and it's like a high-necked, long-sleeved pink dress, and she looks like an older human version of Princess Peach from Mario. So many Mario Bros references in season 2. I wish we hadn't seen them, but there they were. It's the moment you've probably all been waiting for and clicked the video to see. It's my thoughts as a reader of season 2. I have a lot of thoughts, okay? I wish I didn't, but I do. So now I'm sharing them with you so I can finally like exercise all these negative emotions from my body. I might be seeming like a negative Nancy over here, but I really, really want them to make a season 3, okay? I'm not complaining, so they shut down the show. No, that's not what I want. There are a lot of scenes from the show that I genuinely loved and enjoyed. It hurt me so much to say love there, but it's true. I really like some things that they're doing. I love the way that they did the Shadow and Bone thing. Aside from the scale and the special effects, I think that that was the best way they could have told the story. I'm happy that that's the way they did it. I'm just not happy with what they're doing with the CROWS, okay? But I do want to get another season, and I do really want to see the CROWS and their main storyline being depicted in the show. Having said that, I have a lot of beef with the CROWS as a reader, so let's get into it. So what I have written here is that watching season 2 was like watching a car crash. It's terrible, but somehow, for some reason, it's entertaining and you can't seem to look away. It's a beautiful mess, that's what I will say. The second half is more mess than beautiful, but there's a lot of good things there. It's just very messy, and the second half of the season was trash. So let's start with what I liked. I liked that for Alina, they matched the second and third books. I thought that was really good because I thought those books were boring. And I had fun with the new characters, and I loved to see Alina and Genya, and I loved to see Alina and Mal's relationship. Speaking of Alina and Mal, they changed their ending completely. Spoilers for their ending in the books. They end up together. They go and live in an orphanage together, and Alina loses her powers and her hair turns white. I did like the fact that they didn't change that, because that's an overused trope. A powerful girl loses her powers at the end and she just becomes a normal girl again. So I like that they didn't strip Alina of her powers. I did want to see her have white hair, but we kind of got a glimpse of that at the end. I do not care that they killed David prematurely. He was gonna die anyway. And since they're doing the King of Scars plotline prematurely, then that makes sense because we would just get him for like 5 more minutes and he's not that important. I do enjoy the fact that now the triumvirate of Grisha is all women. It's Alina, Genya, and Soya. I do feel like the fabricators are not represented, so it's not as balanced as it could have been. I like that Mal gets to explore his own life and his own hobbies, and that they don't just go back to where they started at the beginning of the story. I do not enjoy the fact that Mal is taking Stormhorn's name. I do like that he's in the ship. I don't like that he takes his name. However, as I said, the King of Scars story is starting prematurely, which means that we're not getting chill Nikolai. We're going straight into Nikolai having to be the king and having problems with the shadow monster now living inside him, which then makes sense for him to give up the Stormhorn persona. It's just sad to see it go. Will Mal be the one representing Ravka at the auction in Crooked Kingdom if we ever get to seeing that on screen? I don't want to get into this too soon, but Mal is currently on a ship with Inash, and they're gonna get to know each other because they're on a ship together, which means that if Mal is the Ravkan representative in Crooked Kingdom, he and Inash are gonna be like buddies. And that's it for the Alina and Shadow and Bone part of the story. As a reader, I'm generally okay with it. Some things happen prematurely, like the introduction of King of Scars storylines, but I'm okay with them. Aside from Soya, who had Soya dressed in a pink dress? Is this like a parallel being like, oh, she's gonna be queen at the end because the queen before was dressed in pink, so now she's dressed like the queen and she ends up being queen at the end of King of Scars? Girl did not look good at all with her skin tone, okay? Soya says she looks good in blue, and that is the absolute truth. She looks good in blue, black, white, silver, and gold. She does not look good in pale pink, so why put her in pale pink? I just put the dots together, like maybe she's dressed like the queen to remind you of her because she becomes the queen, but still, not a good look on her. Please don't ever dress Soya in pink again. Moving on to my thoughts on the CROWS. The CROWS. Where to start? The first half loosely adapts some plot points from Crooked Kingdom. Like we have the Plague, the Siren, Cass versus Pekka, the Bearing Your Child. We also have Inesh versus another assassin, the look for their weak points, what's yours, people wouldn't think to look, past me being a cripple, meaning that Inesh is his weakness. We also have the semi-bathroom scene with Cass helping Inesh treat her wounds, obviously not half as good as in the original material, but I still had fun watching it, okay? I still had fun. So during the first half of the show, I was like, okay, at least we're getting some references to the source material, even though chronologically we shouldn't have gotten there yet, but who am I to deny myself instant serotonin, okay? Could it be done better later on? Sure. But is it entertaining right now? Also, sure. I wish we could have gotten new material. Never thought I would hear myself say this, but I would rather they give me new material for the CROWS than use the source material and bastardize it. That's a good word. But still, up until episode 4, it was exciting and I liked to see it. One thing that I did not like to see was Nina telling everyone Matthias was the love of her life. Like, there is no mystery left for Six of Crows. There's none left. We know everything. We know every single one of their possible motives. And we know that Matthias isn't gonna kill Nina. We know that Nina doesn't hate Matthias. So there's no mystery there. One thing that really opened my eyes to these changes was an interview where Kit says that they had to change some things, specifically in his relationship with Wyland's character, because they are older. And I was like, well, that makes sense. They're playing them as older people, so some character arcs or some dynamics between them work differently now that they're older. So there's not as much hesitation from Wyland or from Jesper. They just get together, and they have gotten together. They were a one-night stand together. And now they work through their issues as more mature young adults. So I was like, okay, I can get behind the changes because now that they're older, it makes sense for them to be more mature and for their relationships to then in turn be more mature. So I can be open-minded, people. Kit really opened my mind when he said that. I was like, you know what? You're right. I'll give that point to you. But that being said, Kanesh is so much better in the books. Kanesh is a couple that was already mature beyond the years to start with in the books. They took that and they put that in the show and then they spit all over them. I love Cass, okay? I do like that we got to see Cass's backstory. It was very confusing maybe. I don't know if I could have pieced it all together if I didn't have like the knowledge of the books behind me, But okay, we now know why Cass hates Pekka, and we know why he doesn't like touching people. Very important factors for Cass as a character. What we don't see is Inesh's backstory, and I feel like the show does her a disservice by not showing us all she went through. Maybe we're going to see it in season 3, and maybe those are gonna connect to why she goes back to working with the CROWS, but we need to see Inesh. Inesh from the books and Inesh in the show, they're not completely different people, but they're at completely different points in their life. Inesh at this show right now, at the end of season 2, is way past what Inesh is at the end of Crooked Kingdom. She has her freedom, she has her boat, she's hunting slavers. And that's only like the beginning of a dream for Inesh at the end of Crooked Kingdom. Inesh, right from the beginning of season 1, is giving a completely different set of playing cards. Cass buys her indenture from Tante Helene, and in doing so loses the Crow Club. But that means that Inesh is free to do as she wants from the beginning. She is not afraid of Tante Helene, she is not afraid of the menagerie. She walks into the menagerie by her own will and talks to Tante Helene like it's nothing. So right from the get-go, it's not that she's a stronger character, it's that she has evolved past her trauma. She's been able to work through it and move forward, which is not something that Inesh at the beginning of Six of Crows has been able to do yet. In Six of Crows, Inesh still has to pay her indenture to Perhaskell, but she really doesn't have to because she could run away at any given moment. She's the Wraith. She could disappear and no one could do anything about it. Why does she stay then? She stays for Cass because if she left, then Cass's neck would be on the line because he was the one who bought her indenture, and then Perhaskell would be really mad at Cass, and Cass would be crippled once again because his Wraith is basically half of his power in the barrel. So that's a dynamic we never get to see. We never get to see Inesh stay in the barrel to protect Cass. We only ever see Cass protecting Inesh. Inesh, the first second she gets this whiff of freedom, she bolts and she goes after it. I'm not saying that that's wrong of her to do. I'm just saying that it's a different dynamic than what they have in the books. I understand that Inesh will have Cass Brecker without armor or not at all, but at the same time, please stay with him. It's just so premature, and I don't know how they're gonna work that dynamic in season 3 if we ever get to it. What is the thing that I hate most about season 2? It's the fact that Inesh leaves the CROWS, leaves Ketterdam, most importantly, leaves Cass, and goes off on her own. It's just such a premature turn of her character arc, and I don't like it because after that, okay, I know they have said that she's gonna be in the Six of Crows adaptation. Obviously, if there's do season 3 or if they do a spin-off, she's gonna be there with the CROWS in the Ice Court Heights. I know that. But what is left for her to do? What is left for her to learn? How else could she grow besides accepting Cass and loving each other openly? What else is there for her character? There's nothing left. I mean, she could find her brother, and I'm sure they're gonna pull storylines from thin air. In terms of relationships, I like where Alina and Mal ended. We are going to see more of Soya and Nikolai. I do kind of wish that they had planted the seeds, but since Soya isn't even there for half of the season because she's with the CROWS, we couldn't even get to see them interact. She did have a throwaway line where she said like, oh, I could be a great queen or something like that, and I was like, oh, prepare thyself because you will, and you will marry Nikolai in the future. But I wish we kind of had seen those seeds planted because funnily enough, they do a lot of things prematurely, but not that. So why are you with me, show? Obviously, the Darkling burst up in flames. He was burned. He is going to be the villain in King of Scars, which is why I think that they have decided to do King of Scars already, because everybody loved Ben Barnes and they don't really want to see him go. So they're like, oh, everyone likes the cast for Shadow and Bone. That is why we're not getting rid of Alina, we're not getting rid of Mal, because everyone loves them. And the Darkling, yeah, he's dead again at the end of the season, like he was at the end of the season 1. But let's speed up the next storylines so that we can have him be the villain and have Ben Barnes come back in the next season. Apart from that, I liked Wylan, I loved him actually. I really liked his dynamic with Jesper. Jesper was such a good character, and I loved Jesper's dynamic with Cass. I loved Cass's dynamic with Wylan. I love Cass's dynamic with Nina. Love to see Nina not just being like good with people, but super smart and like a tactical brain that even surprised Cass. Love to see it. Nina with Matthias was okay. Matthias, that poor guy. And then I just wish we could have gotten to see more from Nina and Inesh before Inesh left us, because now we don't have that background, their friendship. They'd known each other for a year in the books, but now they knew each other for like a week. They did one job together, kind of, and now I'm not gonna believe them being best friends if they try to sell that to us in the next season. But of course, the relationship that I liked the least, just because of the ending, because everything else I enjoyed seeing them together on screen, is Inesh and Cass. I like Cass. I like where he's going. It makes sense for him as a character, and it makes sense for him to be... he's like a good adaptation. Inesh, she's running too far ahead, okay? She should be here, but she's already over here. And I don't know how they're gonna do season 3. Honestly, I don't know. I'm completely lost. That being said, I feel like I have to say, before you come at me in the comments, I love the cast. The cast is perfect. I don't care how they portray the characters. I'm talking about them as people and as a group dynamic of human beings. I love it. I love to see it. You know, it's kind of sad that the most entertaining part for me was not to watch season 2, but watch all the interviews that came after it. I ate those up. They're so good every time I see one. I mean, I love mostly the CROWS because their actors are perfect, but even the Shadow and Bone actors, I love seeing them and they're so funny and I love their dynamics in real life. So this is absolutely nothing against the cast, and I think that they're good. Like, I think each of them plays their character to the best of their abilities. The problem really, as with most TV shows and movies and adaptations, is with the script. So that's who I have the problem with, the script writers and the directors. And that's it. I don't have anything else to give for this video, so please leave a like if you like this video. Comment down below if you've watched season 2 or if you're planning on it. Did I ruin it for you? Good to know. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click that bell button so you get notifications every time I post a new video. I post videos just like this every single Friday, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye!